any kind of visualization software, just go ahead and start your structural diagram by throwing a shape in here. I like this particular shape because I think it looks a bit like an Excel tab. Now, each of these is going to represent a sheet in the file. Yes, we've got to start thinking about overall structure. If overall structure is right, everything else is easy. I always say it's a bit like building a house. You know, what people are doing in Excel is they're building a house, but then they're putting the kitchen at the bottom of the garden. That's going to make living very inconvenient. It's all going to also going to make things like, you know, connecting up the plumbing, connecting up the electricity very difficult. And any builder is going to build a house from a plan, and they're going to manipulate the plan. They're not going to try to manipulate the house and make changes. That's going to be very expensive later. Get the structure right. That's going to simplify our formulae, simplify our coding. A complex and difficult to understand file structure, you're going to be going crazy working with Excel. On the other hand, if you can get it, if you've done your planning and your file structure is simple, it should be fairly routine to build in that plumbing and those electric connections, which are the formulae in the VBA, to get everything working. Very nice. And in programming terms, we'd call this a user interface. You know, when we're looking at different sheets in the file, it's good to know what the possible roles of each sheet is. Because I'm saying to you, do a structural diagram, you're probably saying, yeah, but what are the possible roles of these sheets? Okay, roles for sheets. Yeah, so it could be a user interface. It could be what we call a database sheet. So just storing data. And they're the two examples we've got here. We've got our user interface here. So when building a structural diagram, I would use color to communicate that. And I'll put a key saying the interface sheets are orange, the database sheets are blue. So user interface sheet, a database sheet, other possible sheets. So you might have a calculation sheet. If you're using formulae, it's probably a good idea to put those formulae all on one sheet as far as you can. That allows you to do things like to decide whether you want to make those formulae visible to the user or not, because often we don't, for various reasons. We don't want the user to accidentally mess up those formulae, for example. So that's a possible sheet you might have, a calculation sheet. And then I'd also have some back-end or supporting sheets in the file. And this is where you do things like entries for drop-down menus and things like that. Because he gave away, or he told us about a connection between two of the sheets. So we can go ahead and represent that on our structural diagram. You know, we don't just want to have the shapes in there. We don't just want to have the sheets. We also want to have, what are the main connections between the sheets? What are the data flows around the file? And how are those data flows facilitated? How do they work? And you've probably seen Excel files yourself that have formulae that refer to different sheets. Yeah, that's an essential part of most Excel implementations. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little text box in here as well, just to give us kind of some idea about what's happening here. Because it would actually be VBA to move that data, wouldn't it, Aaron? That's how it's set up.
No, sorry, but I imagine you can. I use a dynamic drop-down box.
Yeah, so we're saying, yeah, there's a connection between these two sheets. And that connection, yeah, is powering some dynamic drop-down menus there. Hopefully with these concepts, you've got roles for different sheets. We've got the structural diagram here. We've tried to put one together. Can you, people at home, people in the chat, and let us know if you're still watching, by the way, guys, do you think you could try to put a structural diagram together for an Excel implementation that you're trying to do? And could you even send it to us on the Facebook group? And we may just use yours next week. We may do a little review of yours next week.